We chose Highland Brown for many reasons. It is one of the commonly available breeds in Uganda. It is friendly. It can blend perfectly within our conditions. It is kind of small in size. It means managing it in terms of feeding is quite cheap compared to other large-sized breeds. Welcome back to Rich Harvest Africa. My name is Emmanuel. At Rich Harvest Africa, we bring you inspiring stories in agriculture. We also bring you farms that are shaping the future of agriculture in Africa. Today, we are at Gomba Next Generation Farm, and where we are right now is the poultry section, but specifically the layer section. Join us as we learn from the team behind Gomba Next Generation Farm on how they have been successful to run such the layer enterprise. And these guys are proving that layer farming is not just a business, but a money-making machine. From the consistency, modern housing, top-notch bookkeeping, and the tips and tricks they are going to give you throughout this video. So stay tuned as we dive into everything that is going to help you build a successful layer farming business. My name is Waswa Semat Andrea. I am an animal scientist. We are at Gomba Next Generation Farm Institute, a dairy-based farm, but with several other enterprises, including poultry, coffee, apiary, piggery, mention it. We started as entirely a dairy farm, but because of various factors, including demand, we diversified to now piggery, poultry, coffee, fisheries, and apiary. Today, we stand at 300 dairy cattle, 20,000 layer birds, and a few pigs, and over 100 beehives in the apiary section. For the birds, we currently have 20,000 layers, which are nearly 2 years next year in January. But we started 3 years ago for the poultry section, where we started with 1,000 layers. That was basically a pilot project to help us understand the feasibility and the technicalities of the business. And once we hit there, we now stocked another 20,000 layers, which we still have up to date. Basically, we have Highland Brown as our breed. We chose Highland Brown for many reasons. One of them, it is one of the commonly available breeds in Uganda. It is friendly. It can blend perfectly within our conditions. It is kind of small in size. It means managing it in terms of feeding is quite cheap compared to other large-sized breeds. The specific ideal design for a poultry layer house is not made by a structure, but it is made by the conditions you provide that make that structure ideal. This structure where we stand now was formerly a cow barn. It was not constructed specifically for poultry. But as I told you before, this farm started as a dairy farm, so we just diversified into poultry. Now we made some modifications on a structure that formerly was meant for cattle so that it can fit into poultry management. But one of the factors purely ideal for a poultry unit, especially for deep litter, we factor in space. A layer should have at least 1.5 square feet per bird. In terms of spacing, we look at ventilation. You can check our unit is purely ventilated. Air must be circulating freely in and out. It has strong doors that make it burglar proof. It has got a strong and leak proof roof that shield it from strong rains and scorching sunshine. But above all, you can see it is shielded with a mesh all over to protect these birds from straying birds, which are deemed to be carriers of certain infections. So as you plan on constructing a poultry unit, you should make sure it is well ventilated, spacious enough, having enough space, well lit. It should allow enough light through it. No, these birds are so much friendly to light. They are excited by light. So we make sure that we receive maximum daylight, and at night, of course, we provide artificial lighting. Basically, these birds, because they are called layers, it means they are meant for egg production. For commercial layers,
we expect them to start laying between 4.5 months and 6 months. That is 18 weeks to 24 weeks. Between 18 weeks to 24 weeks, a bird can start at any time. But by the time you make 24 weeks, that is 6 months, birds should have started laying at least 70%. However, they can start slightly before 18 weeks, but we don't expect a bird to start laying above 24 weeks. In most cases, if a bird does not lay an egg within 24 weeks, it means it did not develop well and it may never lay an egg. Because of that, we have 3 phases. We have the brooding phase, where we brood these birds, provide them with heat and so on in an enclosed structure for at least 6 weeks. Then we have the rearing phase, where we just keep these birds for entirely growing. In that phase, we feed on grower. That goes from 6 weeks up to 14 weeks. Like we said, or like I told you, these birds start laying at least 18 weeks. When they make 12 weeks of age, we introduce these laying boxes. Why do we introduce them earlier? So that the birds get used to them. If we bring them late, we may stress the birds and they avoid them. So we bring them early enough so that the birds get used to living with them. And they are designed in such a way that birds cannot sit comfortably on their top. That's why they are slanting. Because if the bird is allowed to sit comfortably on this top, it may, first of all, the laying nest may not last for long because of the droppings and so on. And they are given different compartments. You know, each bird chooses the best site for its laying activities. On top of the compartment, we provide curtains. These curtains provide some form of privacy, because these birds are naive, I can say. They like privacy while laying, like it is for all other female creatures, that during time for production, every creature needs some form of privacy. So we provide the curtain to give that form of privacy to the birds. On average, each of these laying nests has got 12 cubicles, and let's say if you have 1,000 layers, you need 3 of these nests, each with 12 laying spaces. They can be enough for all the birds. And while positioning them, you choose a site in your unit where birds don't live oftenly. You don't choose a place where birds like to stay. You choose a place where birds don't like, so that they don't disturb those ones that are sitting to lay on them. We know water is a very big factor in managing livestock. We decided to use these semi-automated drinkers. We have a system of pipes where water is supposed to run, and then a big tank as a reservoir and a smaller one as a supplier. So this system is connected to a supplier tank, and the supplier tank is connected to a reservoir tank. The reservoir tank is there to make sure that we have water full time. Of course, sometimes we can have mechanical damages, technical problems and so on, but in most cases we have water full time, because water is a very big tool, is a very big factor if we are to have continuous production. Then you can look at how they align it or arrange it. The feeders are arranged in one line, and the drinkers also arranged in another line. This form of arrangement enables the birds to easily identify food and water. Even the color of the drinkers versus the feeders is different. So the hens can easily know that in this space or in this color we have water, and in the other space we have food. The distribution is supposed to be even or uniform throughout the unit. That's why we need to distribute the drinkers evenly and the feeders evenly, so that birds don't find it hard to find water. For the numbers, each of these drinkers can be enough to water between 70 to 100 birds. So it means if you have 1,000 birds, you need 10 of these. They can work perfectly. If you have more than 10, the better, but you know it all comes with inputs and so on, but 10 is good enough. Beyond 10 is also good. And then for feeders, each of them to feed at most 30. So for every 1,000 layers, you need at least 33 feeders. But mark the distribution and the arrangement. They are a very big role. This arrangement alone provides ample working space. Like for someone who is working in this unit, they have enough space to move through. And also these birds keep making exercises. running here and there. So they need to run through a straight line without meeting any obstacle. That's why these feeders are in one line and another one for drinkers, like that. So this arrangement is not for granted. These drinkers keep on breaking down, but they need to keep on inspected and repaired frequently. These birds, sometimes they go into resting seasons. We need to keep on checking them and make sure each of them is laying. When you find a bird has not laid for long, you remove it and take it to a rehabilitation center. We have some unit we call a rehab. We put there birds that have not laid for long. For example, we identify them using their combs. An actively laying bird has got a purely red comb, very, very flexible and big enough. We shall contrast it with another one that isn't laying. You'll see its comb is small. I think the comb is a primary factor. Then a confirmatory test is done on the pelvic bones. The bones at both sides of their vent are called pelvic bones. These bones have got a space in between them, so it is where the egg passes. So while checking whether the egg is actively, whether the bird is actively laying or not, you place your fingers like this, two of them, the middle finger and the index finger, in the middle of these pelvic bones. If a bird is actively laying, these middle fingers should fit there perfectly and even leave some space at the sides. That is enough confirmation that the bird is actively laying. If it isn't laying, you find these bones are not flexible. They are very close to each other. The space is very narrow between these two bones. And even if you put one finger in them, it may not actually fit. But for active layers, the two fingers fit there perfectly, sometimes even three. So it is a routine activity we do almost actually every week. We go through picking birds that are not actively laying, putting them into a unit where we can closely look at them so that they come back to production. We have a lot of poultry vices. For layers, there are mainly two that are so disturbing. To some level, we cannot avoid them to zero, especially for this system. Maybe for other systems like battery cage, we can. But for deep litter, it is near to impossible to eliminate some of these vices to zero. Others are genetical and so on. One of them is feather pecking. You find birds have pecked themselves almost to nudeness. Some birds become naked. However, not all birds are pecked. Birds tend to zero on a given bird. They choose one hen and peck its feathers almost to complete nudeness. Now like this one, it has been pecked, it is almost naked. However, we can just reduce by cutting their beaks. These beaks are cut at week 12. You cut both the upper one and the lower one, leaving only the nostrils. Now these ones were debeaked, but now they have regrown. These beaks are like fingernails. You cut them, they can grow again. So if the vice continues for long, we can do the second debeaking. But we weigh costs and benefit. When now you debeak now at this age, you go into a risk of low production for at least a month. They reduce production for a month. So when you weigh the cost of benefit, the cost of debeaking versus the benefit of debeaking, and find out that the benefit is bigger than the cost, you can debeak. But probably we shall not debeak them again. Why? They are old enough. We are nearing off-laying them, so it is not feasible to debeak for the second time, and they have less than half a year to get off the farm. Another vice is egg eating. But for egg eating, we can avoid eggs being eaten even without debeaking. These birds cannot eat an intact egg. They will eat an egg which has a crack. I want to show you practically. I will crack one egg and drop it. You will see all of them running to it, and then I'll drop another one which is not cracked. Let me first drop a cracked one, a non-cracked egg. They will run to it, but find out it is intact, and they will not eat it. You can check. They will leave it after some time because it is intact. You see, now they are tending to leave it. See, it is still intact. They have not eaten it, but let me crack it and then drop it. They will eat it within seconds. You see, within about 5 seconds, there is nothing like an egg. But this one can take even a week inside here. because it is intact. For those ones who are into farming or those ones who are intending to do farming, egg eating is a vice which we can easily manage by avoiding egg cracking and breaking. That's why I told you earlier on that we have these laying beds. We have the beddings in the laying nests. They help us reduce the cracks in eggs. Even the damages all over can easily be avoided. We produce over 500 trays of eggs a day, but you only find about 10 pieces of eggs, not trays, 10 pieces of eggs as damages. So that's a way small number of damages made within a day, just because of those beddings. The feeding program is made based on the stage and on the type of feed you have in your reach. From day one of the chicks up to day 7, we give a feed we call pre-starter. It is the first and the most nutritious of all the feeds. Then from week 2 up to week 7, we give starter feed. The starter feed is almost the same like the pre-starter, but it is less nutritious compared to the pre-starter. However, some farmers opt to right away start from starter. It is also okay, but better when you first give pre-starter and then give starter. Then from week 7 up to week 16, we give a grower's mash. That feed is specifically meant to grow the birds. We feed them for only growth, and starter is fed to allow the birds start life. Then grower, you feed them purposely to grow them. The motive of feeding grower is to allow the birds gain muscle and weight. Then from week 16 up to week 18, we give a pre-layers mash. It's called pre-layer because it is just before layer. A pre-layers mash is midway between layers mash and growers mash. Some people skip the pre-lay. It is okay, but good to give a pre-lay because it introduces the bird to a different type of feed. So we don't want to change randomly, but so we give a pre-layers mash so that the birds are introduced to the layer feed gradually. And then from week 18 up to when you offlay the birds, you give a layer feed or a layers mash. You can start it even before the birds start laying, but as long as you make 18 weeks, you can start giving layers or layer feed. Some people think that every starter must be in crumble form or in pellet form. People confuse the texture or the nature of the feeds with the type of feeds. Please, starter does not mean crumbs or pellets, but what makes it a starter is the level of nutrient content in it. So mash can be a starter. You can have starter in this texture. You can have grower in this texture. You can have layer in this texture. What makes it a layer, a starter, or a grower is the level or the nature of nutrient composition in it, basically that. And for starter, you have more protein. Grower, you reduce protein but increase carbohydrates. Then for layer, you reduce protein a little bit but increase calcium. So there are many changes you make. We cannot exhaust them, but the different levels of nutrients in a feed are the ones that qualified to be either starter, a feeder, a grower, or a layer. Throughout the period of feeding or the lifetime of a bird, we don't just give feeds. We only give feeds adlibly within the first 7 days. You put feed there without weighing, and so that we do that because we don't want to limit any bird from starting. We want each bird to access food as much as possible, because remember, they are just learning to live. That's why they're even called starters. They're just starting life. So we put feed in almost every point. We just spread it on the floor of the birds so that every bird can have a chance to pick. But after 7 days, we begin to weigh. There is always a chart that we follow. Each week has got a different level of feeding. Unfortunately, during from day 7 up to week 24, the chart is off head. But for these birds that are in production now, each hen will consume 120 grams every day. That's why we have this weighing scale. We have, first of all, we know the number of birds in each unit. So by the number of birds, we multiply the factor by the factor 120 grams by the number of birds. Then we can know the amount or the measure of feed we are supposed to put into each unit. Having known the whole composition for a day or the amount for a day, then we break it. In the morning at 4 a.m. we give 70% of the feeds in the morning. Then in the afternoon at noon we give another 30% of the feed. By around 2, feeding is done, and now the birds can be left to exercise, to drink, and so on. But we have programmed our feeding into a 2 times day program. We feed at 4 in the morning, where we give 70% of the feed, and then the 30% is given at noon in the afternoon. Then the day is done in terms of feeding. Then for watering, it is ad lib. They are supposed to be given water full time throughout the day, throughout the week. Then still about the feeds. Now you can check they are running because it is time for feeding. The noise is at maximum. That's their nature. That's how they behave when they are feeding. And now the birds you see remaining behind, because during feeding we watch a lot of things. The birds which remain behind, sometimes they have issues with their health. So you observe it. If it happens for like 2-3 days, you pick those birds that normally remain behind when others run for food. You isolate them and put them into a rehab or anything, but you isolate them and give them special care. I want to talk about the composition of the feed. We mix our own feeds. We buy the feed stuffs and then mix them together to come up with a composite feed, which we now give to the birds. Why did we choose to mix our own? First of all, pre-mixed feeds, the feeds that have been mixed by the suppliers and so on, are too high in terms of their prices. They are too way expensive as compared to the feeds you mix at your farm. For example, each kilo of this feed we have made by ourselves, you get your calculators, but it is costed at 1,300 today. Of course they keep on changing, but for now it is at 1,300. But when you buy packed and already mixed feeds, it cannot be bought for less than 1,700 on the market. So already we have a difference of 400. That is too big. Then secondly, we mix our own feeds because we want to be sure of what we include in the feeds. Some people who sell feeds are not very credible, especially people who don't have a brand. They are not very credible and they are not consistent. They keep changing their compositions. Of course, they change in the name of increasing profit margins and so on, and there are very high levels of adulteration of feeds. People mix a lot of things in the feeds. So because for us we want to be sure about what we give our birds, we choose to mix our own feeds so that we know the composition and we are sure of it, so that if anything happens to the birds, we can first look at other factors before we come to the feed, because we know our feed is purely made by ourselves. And still about mixing, you can mix using a machine, a mixer, but you can also choose to mix with a spade manually. In this farm, being big, we have a mixer, we have a machine, but we chose not to use it for some 2 reasons. We used it at the start, but we found out that it was expensive to maintain. It has a capacity of 3 tons every round of mixing, and whenever we used it, we used to have 3 rounds of mixing. That is 9 tons, and 9 tons could take us for 80 days. It is dangerous to keep a mixed feed for 80 days, especially for layers. They are very sensitive birds. Within the 80 days, anything can happen here or on the feeds. You know, these feeds have got biological chemicals, so a lot of reactions could be taking place. So within the 80 days, you find out that the original composition has been lost because of many reactions that take place within the feeds. Of course, those reactions are invisible, but sometimes you can detect them. In some cases, heat builds up within the feeds. So those changes, we thought they were not smart or fair to live with them. We decided to mix only a small composition which can be fed within a day or two, so that we can renew the mixing every other day. We could also make small compositions of mixing or small volumes of mixtures with a mixer, but because running it for a small time is not so economical, so we chose to leave it. And again, remember, as you use it, there are repairs and maintenance you have to make. So those things were bigger. The costs of maintaining it were bigger than the role it could perform for us. We decided to leave it, and now we use our hands to mix. The beauty with using hands to mix, you have a full view, a 360 view of the feeds. You can inspect them. If there is any irregularity, if there is any foreign material, you can easily pick it from the feed. Remember, these things are packed in polythene bags. Sometimes you find pieces of polythene bags within the feeds. So when you use a machine or a mixer, it is hard to identify them and pick them out than it is while using a spade to mix. So for many reasons, we chose to use the spade. And we turn these feeds several times until it is homogeneously mixed, and then we can pack it and then feed it. That's why we don't use a machine anymore.